When we sit down to play a game that we've never played before, we ask, so what are the rules? People often think that way about Christianity. They want to know, what are the rules? I must admit that I struggle with this myself, but I'm beginning to see how destructive it is to think of Christianity primarily in terms of rule keeping. Most of the metaphors in the New Testament that describe our walk with Christ have to do with relationship rather than rule keeping. Christ is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. Christ is the shepherd and we are his sheep. Christ is the master and we are his servants. Even the metaphor of the body, Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12, is about the church's relationship with each other and with Christ, the head. Even though there is a sense in which relationships have rules, we don't typically think of relationships in those terms. After all, a couple who primarily thought of their marriage in terms of rule keeping wouldn't have a very healthy marriage, would they? Similarly, it's not healthy to think of our relationship with Christ primarily in terms of rule keeping. Here are some of the problems that a rule-keeping spirit creates. Number one, a rule-keeping spirit promotes sin. In the same way that game players asked, I checked, it's not against the rules. Many people do the same thing with the Bible. They believe as long as the Bible doesn't specifically say something is a sin, they can do it. But what if I treated my marriage that way? Imagine a husband who says when he comes home at 2 in the morning, you can't be mad at me because there's no rule saying that I can't come home at 2 in the morning. That's not the way that a marriage works, and that's not the way Christianity works. This type of rule-keeping spirit motivates people to look for loopholes and alternative interpretations in order to get away with as much as they can. Instead, we ought to have an attitude like Paul, who said, so whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. Number two, a rule-keeping spirit encourages people to do the minimum. Rule keepers love to know the rules so they know the minimum they have to do in order to win. Rule keepers love checklists because once they've done everything on the list, they don't have to do anymore. Again, what if I treated my marriage this way? Imagine me saying to my wife, hey, there's no rule saying I have to give you flowers on our anniversary. How well does that kind of an attitude work in a relationship? In the church, we have gone through the New Testament and come up with several lists. These lists are non-negotiable matters of salvation, worship, church organization, and Christian living. Everything on these lists, of course, is biblical, but they often leave a person feeling like once he has checked everything off the list, he has arrived. Many of us need to stop making checklists and just do every good work we have the opportunity to do. See Galatians 6:10. Number three, a rule-keeping spirit fosters competition. Rule keepers are, by nature, competitive. We like to know the score. We want to know how we're doing in relation to others. But when I forget my wife's birthday, can I say, well, at least I have more points than the husband down the street? No, of course not. Relationships are not competitions, and neither is Christianity. Unfortunately, we still struggle not to be like the Pharisee who prayed, God, I thank you that I'm not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. He was keeping score. He thought he ranked higher than the tax collector, but he had no real relationship with God. God doesn't grade on a curve. You're not in competition with others. So stop comparing yourself to others and walk humbly with the Lord. Number four, a rule-keeping spirit turns us into referees. Rule keepers love to play referee. They love to throw penalty flags and blow whistles when someone breaks a rule. They may even add a few of their own rules to the game where they believe they're necessary. Imagine meeting a friend at a restaurant. When you come in a couple minutes late, you hear, whoa, you're late. That's a violation of the friendship rule. Don't do that again or I'll have to dock you 1 point. That's not how you treat a friend. As Christians, we have created all kinds of rules based on our traditions. One tradition is men wearing suits and ties to worship. This is a tradition about which Christians can sometimes act like referees, blowing a whistle and shouting, the rules clearly state that you must wear such and such. If someone's soul is in danger, restore them with the spirit of gentleness, Galatians 6:1, but not the spirit of self-appointed referee. And if it's just your opinion or a man-made tradition, don't make it a rule. Number five, a rule-keeping spirit creates a sense of entitlement. When it comes to rule keeping, it's all about winning, isn't it? We believe that if we play by the rules, play better than everyone else, and the judge is fair, then we're entitled to a victory trophy. The New Testament uses several sports metaphors to inspire Christians to run the race and win the prize. But this is simply speaking of the discipline and perseverance that Christians need to have. It's not saying that going to heaven is a matter of going through all the right motions, checking all the right boxes, following all the rules, and then being entitled to eternal life. Nothing could be further from the truth. Among other things, our relationship to God is like that of a slave and a master. A slave works hard and does everything he's supposed to do because of his relationship to the master. He doesn't earn anything by doing his job. See Luke 17. We're not entitled to God's blessings, especially salvation. How could anyone think, of course I'm going to heaven, I kept all the rules? Trust me, you don't want this to be about rule keeping. If we're on a basis of rule keeping, you'd be forever lost. Thankfully, it's a matter of grace, Ephesians 2:8-9. Don't think that I'm discounting obedience. On the contrary, when we stop being rule keepers, we can become obedient from the heart. This will cause us to stop asking, what can I get away with, and start asking, what pleases God? It will cause us to stop thinking of our Christianity as a game. It will cause us to worship differently, serve differently, and interact with others differently. I'm still working on this. How about you?